The clock struck exactly 3 in the morning when Sarah woke with a strange sensation. It wasn't a noise that awakened her, but rather a presence. Something or someone was watching her in the dimness of the bedroom. Sarah blinked several times, adjusting her vision to the darkness, until she could make out 2 golden eyes shining intensely in the dark, fixed on her. "Who's there?" she whispered, her hand fumbling for the lamp on the nightstand beside her bed. When she turned on the light, she found herself facing a cat as black as night, sitting elegantly on the trunk at the foot of her bed. The feline didn't startle at the sudden light. It remained motionless, observing her with those hypnotic eyes that seemed to contain all the mysteries of the universe. Sarah frowned, confused. She lived on the 10th floor of an apartment building in downtown Boston and kept all her windows closed because of the air conditioning. How had this cat gotten into her apartment? "How did you get in here, little friend?" she asked, cautiously extending her hand. The cat remained still for a few seconds, assessing her before approaching with silent steps and rubbing its head against her fingers. A deep, comforting purr filled the room. Sarah wasn't particularly a cat person. In fact, she hadn't had pets since leaving her parents' home 15 years ago. Her busy life as the editor-in-chief of an architecture magazine simply didn't allow it. Constant travel, meetings that ran late into the night, tight deadlines. Who would care for an animal in her absence? But there was something about this particular cat, something in those golden eyes that seemed to see beyond the surface, that deeply intrigued her. "You must be hungry," she murmured, getting up. In the kitchen, she improvised a dish with canned tuna, the only remotely suitable option for felines she found in her pantry. The cat followed her silently, like an elegant shadow, and ate with surprising manners, making no mess. While the animal ate, Sarah checked all the windows and doors of the apartment. Everything was closed, exactly as she had left it before going to sleep. The only plausible explanation was that the cat had gotten in when a neighbor paid her a quick visit earlier, though she couldn't remember receiving visitors in the past few days. "Tomorrow we'll find out where you came from," she said to the cat, which was now meticulously cleaning itself after its meal. "But tonight you can stay." She improvised a little bed with soft towels in the corner of the living room and provided a bowl of water. To her surprise, the feline ignored her preparations, and when she returned to the bedroom, it was already comfortably settled at the foot of her bed. "I guess you didn't understand the deal," smiled Sarah, unable to get irritated. She lay down again, expecting the animal would soon get bored and go explore the apartment. But the cat remained there, watching her attentively, as if standing guard. There was something strangely comforting about that presence, and Sarah fell asleep more easily than on any other night in recent weeks. She slept so deeply that for the first time in years, she didn't wake up startled in the middle of the night, tormented by work worries and the eternal feeling of loneliness she had carried since her divorce. For the first time, she slept through the night, lulled by the soft purring of her mysterious visitor. The next morning, upon waking, she noticed that the cat had disappeared as mysteriously as it had appeared. The day dawned with the usual noise of the metropolis, impatient horns, the murmur of millions of voices, the constant roar of a city that never sleeps. Sarah was preparing her coffee when she noticed something unusual on the kitchen counter, a sheet of paper she didn't remember leaving there. As she approached, she recognized the document. It was the contract for the sale of her parents' farmhouse in Vermont, which she had kept in her office drawer the day before. She planned to sign it that week, the last property that connected her to her roots and childhood memories. "How did this get here?" she murmured, intrigued. A soft meow caught her attention. The black cat was sitting on the inner windowsill of the living room, watching her with those penetrating golden eyes. "So you didn't leave?" Sarah smiled, feeling an inexplicable hint of relief. During breakfast, Sarah observed the feline methodically exploring every corner of the apartment, as if taking a detailed inventory. There was an intention in its movements that didn't seem typical of an ordinary animal. The cat would occasionally stop to look at her, as if wanting to make sure she was still there. After breakfast, Sarah made 2 decisions. She would buy proper supplies for her feline visitor and try to find the possible owner. She created a small digital flyer and posted it on the building's social networks. "Found black cat, golden eyes, extremely well behaved. Please contact me if you are the owner." At the pet shop near her building, she surprised herself by choosing not just the basics, but premium items. The best food, interactive toys, a comfortable bed. even an elegant collar with a golden pendant. "It's only temporary," she justified to herself as she paid the surprisingly high bill. Back at the apartment, she found the cat exactly where she'd left it, patiently sitting on the couch. "You're not an ordinary cat, are you?" she commented, arranging the newly purchased items. The animal responded with a calm purr, as if agreeing with the observation. The rest of the day passed surprisingly pleasantly. For the first time in years, Sarah didn't open her computer to work on a Saturday. Instead, she spent hours simply observing her new companion, trying to interact with the toys, which the cat seemed to regard with polite indifference, and eventually settling on the couch with a book she had bought months before but never found time to read. The cat settled beside her, a comforting warmth against her leg, occasionally looking up at her as if checking if she was all right. It was then that Sarah noticed something curious. Every time she looked at the feline, she thought of her father, not in a melancholy or sad way, but recalling specific moments of shared joy, fishing at the lake on the farm, stories invented under the stars, walks through verdant fields on dewy mornings. "You remind me of my dad," she whispered, stroking the velvety ears of the animal. He also had that quiet way of observing, as if he could see things no one else could. The cat blinked slowly, that gesture that feline behavior experts associate with demonstrations of affection and trust. In the evening, as Sarah prepared dinner, her cell phone rang. It was Michael, the realtor responsible for selling the farmhouse. "Sarah, I just wanted to confirm that you'll sign the contract on Monday. The buyers are eager to close the deal." While talking, Sarah noticed the cat sitting in the doorway of the kitchen, watching her with unsettling intensity. "Can I think about it a bit more? Maybe I need a few additional days," she replied, surprising herself with her own words. After hanging up, she sat on the kitchen floor at the cat's level. "What's happening to me? I spent months organizing this sale." The feline approached, touched her hand with its moist nose and left the kitchen, stopping at the entrance to the hallway to check if she was following. "Do you want to show me something?" asked Sarah, getting up. The cat led her to the office, where it jumped nimbly onto the desk and sat precisely on a folder that Sarah hadn't opened in years, the family photo album. "How did you know?" she murmured, picking up the album with trembling hands. Upon opening it, the first image she saw was of her father, sitting on the porch of the farmhouse with a black cat in his lap. A cat with golden eyes, painfully familiar. Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. "It can't be the same cat," she whispered. That was more than 20 years ago. Turning the page, she found a handwritten note by her father. "The guardian of our family has returned. As in the time of my grandfather, he appears when we need him most, even if we don't know it." Sarah looked at the cat, which watched her with an ancient wisdom in its golden eyes. "Who are you, really?" she asked quietly, feeling that her life was about to change forever. Sunday dawned with a fine drizzle, typical of New England fall weather, transforming the urban landscape into shades of grey and silver. Sarah sat at the kitchen table with a steaming cup of tea, the photo album open in front of her, and the mysterious cat settled in her lap, purring softly. After the discovery of the previous night, she had spent hours leafing through the album and rediscovering not just photos but also small notes left by her father over the years. In several of them he mentioned the guardian, always referring to a black cat with golden eyes that, according to his notes, appeared at crucial moments in the family's history. "My great-great-grandfather saw him before deciding not to board that ship that sank," she read aloud. "My grandfather found him on the porch on the eve of a fire that would have destroyed the crops, giving time to save the harvest." The cat in her lap raised its head, as if listening attentively. Sarah continued reading, "And now he has come to me a week before discovering my heart condition. If it weren't for him waking me that night, I might not be here to write these words." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. Her father had never mentioned these stories when he was alive. He had always been a practical man, an engineer by training, not given to superstitions or fantasies. Seeing him write about a guardian cat, almost mystical, seemed completely out of character. "Why did he never tell me about you?" she asked the feline, which merely blinked slowly in response. The purring intensified when Sarah turned the page and found a photo of herself at 6 years old, sleeping on the porch sofa of the farmhouse with a black kitten nestled on her chest. "I don't remember this," she whispered, touching the faded image. The note beside it, in her father's careful handwriting, said, "Sarah and the Guardian, first meeting, He appeared on the day she broke her arm, hours before the accident. He tried to prevent her from climbing that tree, but she was still too young to understand. Sarah closed her eyes, fragments of memory returning like pieces of an incomplete puzzle. She remembered the accident, the fall from the tree, the sharp pain, but not the cat. How could she have forgotten something so significant? The phone rang, interrupting her reflections. It was her mother calling from Arizona, where she had moved after Sarah's father passed away. "Good morning, dear. Just calling to see how you are. Did you sign the sale papers?" Sarah hesitated, looking at the cat that was now stretching in her lap. "Not yet, Mom. Actually, I've been thinking, maybe we should reconsider selling the farm." The silence on the other end of the line was revealing. When her mother finally spoke, her voice was laden with emotion. "What happened, Sarah? You spent the last few months convincing everyone, especially yourself, that selling was the right decision. I know, but I found Dad's photo album yesterday and—" Sarah paused, unsure of how to explain. How could she tell her mother that a possibly supernatural cat had mysteriously appeared in her apartment, making her question important decisions? "I think we need more time to think about it." After hanging up, Sarah realized that the cat had disappeared. She searched the apartment with growing anxiety, but there was no sign of the animal. "Please don't leave now," she murmured, a knot forming in her throat. That's when she noticed that the closet door, normally closed, was ajar. Upon opening it completely, she found the cat sitting on a travel suitcase she hadn't used in years. Do you want me to go somewhere?" The animal jumped from the suitcase to the floor and walked determinedly to the living room table, where Sarah had left her car keys and a separate set of smaller keys, those to the farmhouse in Vermont. "You want me to go there?" stated Sarah, not as a question but a realization. The cat responded with an affirmative meow that seemed almost human in its clarity. Sarah checked her watch. It was only 9 a.m. If she left now, she would reach the farm before noon. There were no pressing commitments that Sunday, and something inside her, an intuition she hadn't felt in a long time, told her she needed to make this trip. "All right," she decided, picking up the keys. "We'll go." To her surprise, the cat seemed to understand perfectly, heading to the apartment door and patiently waiting for her to prepare what was necessary for the trip. Half an hour later, they were in the car. The feline settled in the passenger seat, as if it had made that journey hundreds of times before, looking out the window with interest as they left the city behind. Sarah turned on the radio, but kept the volume low. Her mind was buzzing with unanswered questions. What would she find at the farm? Why had that cat, possibly the same one mentioned in her father's notes, though that seemed impossible, appeared now, just when she was about to cut her last tie to the past? As they moved away from the city, the concrete towers gave way to greener, more open landscapes. Sarah felt a tension she didn't even know she was carrying begin to dissipate from her shoulders. Beside her, the black cat kept its eyes fixed on the road, as if it knew exactly where they were going and, more importantly, why. The winding road that led to the farmhouse was exactly as Sarah remembered, bordered by century-old trees whose branches formed a natural tunnel of foliage. The only difference was that now, after years of absence, the vegetation had grown undisciplined, making the passage narrower and wilder. "It's more abandoned than I imagined," commented Sarah, as she carefully maneuvered around the puddles formed by the recent rain. Beside her, the cat remained alert, looking out the window with an intensity that seemed to go beyond mere feline curiosity. After the last curve, Sarah's heart tightened at the sight of the house. The stone and wood construction, which had once been the family's favorite refuge, now showed clear signs of neglect. Missing roof tiles, the porch with loose boards, dusty windows that opaquely reflected the sunlight beginning to break through the clouds. Parking in front of the house, Sarah turned off the engine and remained silent for a few moments, absorbing the sight and the contradictory emotions it provoked. "Dad would be sad to see the farm like this," she murmured. The cat let out a low meow, almost as if agreeing, and jumped onto her lap before leaping out through the half-open window. Sarah watched it walk determinedly to the front door, where it sat, waiting. As she got out of the car, the familiar aroma of moist earth, mixed with eucalyptus and wildflowers, enveloped her like an unexpected embrace. The air here was different, clean, invigorating, loaded with memories that the city could never offer. With keys in hand, Sarah approached the door. The lock was rusty, initially resisting before yielding with a protesting creak. The interior of the house was exactly as it had been left almost 2 years ago when she had last visited to assess what needed to be done before the sale. White sheets covered the few pieces of furniture that remained, the worn leather sofa where her father used to read, the solid oak dining table where they had shared so many meals, the piano that no one in the family really knew how to play, but that her father had insisted on keeping because a house without music is not a home. The cat moved ahead, moving through the space with the familiarity of one who knows every corner. Sarah followed, removing the sheets as she passed, raising clouds of dust that danced in the rays of light penetrating through the dirty windows. "What are we looking for exactly?" she asked the feline, feeling slightly foolish for expecting an answer. To her surprise, the animal headed directly to her father's office, the only room that Sarah had left untouched after his death. The door was locked, but the cat sat in front of it, looking alternately at Sarah and at the lock. "You want to go in there?" Sarah hesitated. The office contained the last truly personal things of her father, his books, notebooks, unfinished projects. She hadn't had the courage to face those memories after he was gone, and had subsequently convinced herself that it was better to leave the past behind. With a deep sigh, she removed from the keychain the small brass key she rarely looked at, but had never been able to discard. She fitted it into the lock, which yielded with surprising ease. Her father's scent, a mixture of aftershave, old books, and the slight trace of pipe tobacco he occasionally smoked against medical recommendations, still lingered in the air, as if time had been frozen within those four walls. Unlike the rest of the house, the office wasn't covered. Each object remained exactly where her father had left it. The fountain pen on an open notebook, reading glasses resting on a stack of books, the pipe in the soapstone ashtray that Sarah had carved for him as a child. The cat jumped onto the desk with elegance, carefully avoiding any disturbance to the objects. With surgical precision, it placed its paw on the open notebook, as if pointing to something specific. Sarah approached, her heart racing. The exposed page contained a diary entry, dated just 3 weeks before her father's passing. "The Guardian returned today. As always, his arrival announces changes. I feel my time is approaching, but I do not fear. My only concern is Sarah. She has lost herself in the concreteness of the big city, forgotten to look at the stars, to listen to the wind in the leaves. I've lost count of how many times I've tried to bring her back to the farm in recent years, but she always finds excuses, deadlines, meetings, that magazine that consumes her life without truly fulfilling it. If you are reading this, my daughter, know that the Guardian does not appear by chance. He comes when we need to reconnect, with our roots, with our true purposes, with the parts of ourselves that we allowed to fall asleep. And remember, the true treasure of this family was never in investments or properties, but under the third board of the deck, where the sun touches precisely at noon on the summer solstice." Sarah lifted her eyes from the notebook, silent tears rolling down her face. The cat watched her with those infinitely patient and wise golden eyes. "The summer solstice is 3 days from now," murmured Sarah, suddenly understanding why the animal had appeared at that specific moment. "And exactly 3 days before I was to sign the sale papers." She looked out the office window, which perfectly framed the old wooden deck built by her grandfather, where she had so often played as a child, and where, later, her father had spent hours meditating while watching the sunset. The cat jumped back to the floor and walked to the door, looking back as if inviting her to follow. "Do you want to go there now?" The animal swished its tail in a movement that seemed clearly negative. "I understand," said Sarah, surprising herself with her own certainty. "We need to wait for the right moment, for the solstice." She felt a conviction growing inside her, something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Whatever treasure her father had mentioned, she couldn't let it fall into the hands of the farm's buyers. She needed, at minimum, to delay the sale until she discovered the meaning of that enigma. "I think we need to spend a few days here," she decided. The cat approached, rubbing its body against her legs as if approving the decision, its purr reverberating in the silence of the office like an ancient lullaby almost forgotten. The next 2 days were transformative for Sarah. If someone who knew her in Boston saw her now, they would hardly recognize her. Hair tied in a careless ponytail, simple clothes stained with dirt, face slightly sunburned, but illuminated by a smile that hadn't visited her lips in a long time. The decision to stay at the farm until the solstice meant improvisation. The small market in the nearby village provided the basics for her stay, and Sarah found herself enjoying the limitations. No reliable internet, intermittent cell phone signal, only the books from her father's shelf for entertainment. "I never thought cleaning a house could be so satisfying," she commented to the cat, which supervised her work while comfortably lying on the newly cleaned windowsill. And it was true. There was something deeply gratifying about removing years of dust and abandonment, about fixing small broken things, about bringing life back to spaces that had once been so loved. Each renovated room seemed to release not just the accumulated dirt, but also layers of tension that Sarah had carried for so long without realizing. The cat rarely left her side, except for occasional hunts in the fields around the house, always returning with small presents that Sarah politely declined, to the feline's evident disappointment. On the night before the solstice, after a whole day working in the garden, removing weeds, pruning bushes, discovering with joy that some of the rose bushes planted by her grandmother still stubbornly survived, Sarah sat on the restored porch with a cup of tea. The Vermont sky revealed a spectacle that she had long forgotten was possible. Thousands of stars, without the light pollution of the city to obscure them, spread like diamonds on black velvet. "Dad was right," she murmured to the cat, which rested in her lap. "I really did forget to look at the stars." The animal purred in response, a sound that Sarah had begun to interpret as agreement. Her cell phone rang, momentarily bringing her back to the urban reality that now seemed strangely distant. It was Michael, the realtor, clearly anxious. "Sarah, the buyers are pushing. Can I send someone there tomorrow with the documents for you to sign? They've increased the offer by 15%. Sarah observed the starry sky, the outline of the mountains against the horizon, felt the comforting weight of the cat in her lap, and the peace she had rediscovered in these few days. "Michael, I need more time." "How much time?" "I'm not sure. Maybe I don't want to sell anymore." The silence on the other end was followed by a flood of arguments. The excellent deal she was refusing, the work that had gone into preparing the sale, the irrationality of keeping a property that would remain abandoned most of the time. "I'll think more about it," she finally responded, ending the conversation. As she hung up, she noticed that the cat was no longer in her lap. She found it at the porch door, looking fixedly at the deck, as if reminding her of the mystery they still needed to solve. "Tomorrow we'll know, won't we?" smiled Sarah. "Whatever my father hid under that board." She thought of all the possibilities. Important documents, some family heirloom, perhaps simply a personal letter. Whatever the treasure, Sarah was beginning to suspect that her father's true gift had already been delivered. These days of reconnection, of rediscovery of a part of herself that she had thought forever lost. On the morning of the solstice, Sarah woke before the sun, an almost childlike anticipation stirring her. She prepared a strong coffee and sat on the porch to watch the sunrise, the cat faithfully by her side. The hours dragged as she waited for noon. She occupied herself with small tasks around the house, repeatedly checking the clock, mentally calculating the exact position where the sun would touch the deck. When the moment finally approached, Sarah headed to the deck with her heart racing. The cat walked in front of her with an almost ceremonial dignity, like a spiritual guide conducting an ancient ritual. The summer sun was exactly at its zenith, its rays directly hitting the deck, creating a pattern of light and shadow between the time-worn boards. Sarah observed carefully, trying to determine which would be the third board mentioned by her father. It was the cat who solved the dilemma, positioning itself precisely on a board that, under the direct light of noon, revealed a subtle outline, a small and perfect circle carved in the wood, almost imperceptible unless the light hit it at the exact angle. "It's here," whispered Sarah, kneeling beside the animal. The board was slightly loose. Carefully, Sarah inserted her fingers into the gap and lifted it, revealing a small compartment excavated into the supporting structure. Inside was a metal box, the type used to store cigars, but with a much older appearance. With trembling hands, Sarah removed it from its hiding place and opened the lid. The interior contained several carefully arranged items: a small, ancient-looking key, a bundle of yellowed letters tied with a blue silk ribbon, a pocket watch that Sarah immediately recognized as belonging to her great-grandfather, and a sealed envelope with her name written in her father's elegant handwriting. With a racing heart, she opened the envelope first. Inside was a letter, dated just days before his unexpected passing. "My dearest Sarah, if you are reading this, the guardian has fulfilled his promise and led you back to our family sanctuary. There is so much I wanted to tell you, so many stories that deserve to be preserved rather than sold along with these old boards and stones. What you hold in your hands is the legacy of the Wilsons, not measured in dollars and cents, but in connections, in roots that run deeper than any foundation. The watch belonged to your great-grandfather, who started our family tradition of recording encounters with the Guardian in the journal you'll find among the letters. Each generation has added to it, each has been protected in times of need. But the true treasure isn't in these objects. It's in what this place represents. The continuity of life, the wisdom of slowing down to listen to what truly matters. I've watched you lose yourself in the noise of modern life, my bright and talented daughter, not because you wanted to, but because the current was strong and swimming against it is exhausting. I've seen you drift further from your true self with each promotion, each achievement that society values but doesn't truly nourish the soul. The Guardian appears only when we are at crossroads, when we need to be reminded of who we truly are before we forget completely. He guided me through my darkest moments, as he did my father, and his father before him. Whatever you decide to do with this property is ultimately your choice, but know that some inheritances can't be measured in acres or dollars. Some roots, once severed, cannot be regrown. I love you beyond words, beyond time. Dad! Tears flowed freely down Sarah's face as she clutched the letter to her chest. The cat approached silently and pressed its warm body against her knee, its golden eyes filled with a compassion that seemed too profound for a mere animal. He knew, whispered Sarah. He knew I was lost. In that moment, sitting on the sun-warmed boards of the old deck, surrounded by mountains that had witnessed generations of her family, Sarah felt something shift within her, a recognition of a truth she had been running from for years. The relentless pursuit of success in Boston had left a void that no promotion or accolade could fill. She carefully examined the other contents of the box. The journal was a revelation, detailed accounts spanning over a century, each describing encounters with a black cat with golden eyes at pivotal moments in her ancestors' lives. The earliest entry dated back to 1883, written by her great-great-grandfather, describing how the cat had prevented him from boarding a ship that later sank in a storm. The descriptions were too specific, too consistent across generations to dismiss as mere family superstition. And now here she was, experiencing the same phenomenon, guided by the same mysterious guardian that had watched over her family for generations. As the afternoon light began to shift, Sarah returned the items to the box, but kept the letter. She had decisions to make, profound ones that would alter the course of her life. But for the first time in years, she felt clear-headed, connected to something larger than her immediate concerns. The cat watched her with those knowing eyes, as if it could see her thoughts taking shape. "You've done your job well, haven't you?" she said softly, scratching behind its ears. "You've brought me back to myself." The animal purred loudly, a sound of clear satisfaction, before stretching luxuriously in a patch of sunlight on the deck. Sarah pulled out her phone and composed a text to Michael, the realtor. "I've decided not to sell the farm. Please inform the buyers. Details to follow." As she pressed send, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Whatever challenges lay ahead in reconfiguring her life to accommodate this decision, she knew it was the right one. In that quiet moment, with the sun beginning its descent toward the mountains and the guardian cat purring contentedly beside her, Sarah understood what her father had been trying to tell her all along. Some treasures can't be valued in dollars, and some inheritances are meant to be lived, not sold. Over the next few days, Sarah immersed herself in uncovering the mysteries contained in the journal. Each night she sat by the fireplace, the black cat curled beside her, reading the accounts of her ancestors. The stories were fascinating, tales of narrow escapes, timely warnings, unexpected guidance, all facilitated by the appearance of the guardian cat. What struck her most was the consistency. The descriptions of the cat were identical across generations: midnight black fur with a small white diamond on its chest, eyes like amber flames, an uncanny intelligence that transcended animal behavior. The very same cat that now shared her days and nights at the farmhouse. "How is this possible?" she asked aloud, looking at her companion. "These accounts go back almost 150 years. No cat lives that long." The feline merely blinked slowly, offering no explanations. On her 5th day at the farm, Sarah was surprised by an unexpected visitor. A weathered pickup truck rumbled up the driveway, and out stepped an elderly man with silver hair and kind eyes, Jack Henderson, her father's closest friend and the caretaker who had occasionally checked on the property over the years. "I heard you were back," he said, embracing her warmly. "Michael the realtor called to complain that you'd pulled the sale. Said you'd gone native up here at the old place." Sarah laughed, inviting him in for coffee. "I guess I have, in a way. The city feels like another lifetime." As they settled on the porch with steaming mugs, the black cat appeared from nowhere and jumped onto Jack's lap, purring loudly. "Well, I'll be damned," whispered Jack, stroking the animal with reverent hands. "He's back." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "You know him?" Jack's eyes met hers, filled with understanding. "Everyone in your family has known him, Sarah. He's been around longer than anyone can remember. Your dad called him the Guardian. But how is that possible? Cats don't live for generations." Jack shrugged, his weathered face crinkling with a smile. "Some things defy explanation. Your great-grandfather once told my grandfather that the cat wasn't just an animal. It was the spirit of the land itself, taking a form that could interact with the family it had chosen to protect." "That sounds like folklore," Sarah said, but without conviction. After what she had experienced, she was finding it harder to dismiss such notions. "Most deep truths start as folklore," Jack replied simply. "Your father believed that the Guardian appears when someone in the family reaches a crossroads, when they need to be guided back to their true path. He appeared to your father right before he decided to leave his corporate job and move back here to write his books." Sarah hadn't thought about that dramatic career change her father had made when she was a teenager, leaving a lucrative engineering position to become a modestly successful author of historical fiction. At the time, she had thought it impulsive, even irresponsible. Now she wondered if it had been the most authentic decision of his life. "He tried to tell me something important was happening when the cat appeared to him again before he died," she said quietly. "I was too busy to really listen." Jack nodded sympathetically. "That's usually how it goes. We recognize the important moments in retrospect." They sat in companionable silence for a while, the cat purring contentedly between them. Finally, Jack spoke again, his voice gentle but direct. "What will you do now, Sarah? This place needs someone who loves it, someone who will be present, not just a weekend visitor." It was the question she had been asking herself repeatedly over the past days. Her life in Boston, the prestigious job, the elegant apartment, the social connections, seemed increasingly hollow when compared to the deep sense of belonging she had rediscovered here. "I'm thinking of making some changes," she admitted. "Maybe I could work remotely most of the time or find something local. There must be places that need an editor, even in rural Vermont. Your dad always said you had inherited his writer's soul, not just his editor's eye," Jack commented. "Maybe this is the place where you finally write that novel you used to talk about." Sarah felt a jolt of recognition. Years ago, before the demands of her career had consumed her, she'd harbored dreams of writing fiction. Somehow, Jack had remembered a passion she herself had almost forgotten. That evening after Jack left, promising to help with any repairs the farmhouse needed, Sarah sat at her father's desk and opened his laptop for the first time. The password came to her instantly: Guardian 1883, the year of the first recorded appearance of the black cat. Among his files, she found folders of research, outlines for books he'd never had time to write, and a document simply titled, "For Sarah." It contained a single line: "The story begins when you're ready to listen to it." Outside the window, twilight painted the Vermont mountains in shades of purple and gold. The black cat jumped onto the desk and settled beside the computer, its golden eyes meeting hers with what could only be described as encouragement. Sarah opened a new document and typed a title: The Guardian's Chosen. And then, for the first time in years, the words began to flow. 1 year later, Sarah stood on the porch of the renovated farmhouse, watching the autumn leaves dance across the freshly mowed lawn. The transformation was remarkable, not just of the property, which now glowed with renewed life, but of herself. The woman who had once measured success in promotions and paychecks now found fulfillment in simpler metrics: the completion of her first novel, the restoration of her family home, the deepening relationships with neighbors and the local community, the slow rhythm of days shaped by seasons rather than deadlines. She had not abandoned her professional skills entirely. 3 days a week, she worked remotely as a consultant for her former magazine. The other days were devoted to writing, to tending the small vegetable garden she had planted in the spring, and to exploring the extensive journals of her ancestors that she had found in the attic, a treasure trove of family history all mentioning the mysterious guardian. The cat remained a constant presence, though it came and went as it pleased. Sometimes it disappeared for days, only to return as if it had never left, materializing beside her computer as she wrote, or appearing on the windowsill when she woke in the morning. Its golden eyes seemed to hold approval for the changes she had made in her life. Today was special, the anniversary of her return to the farm and her discovery of her father's hidden message. To mark the occasion, she had invited her mother to visit, something that hadn't happened since before her father's passing. "Do you think she'll understand?" Sarah asked the cat, which was grooming itself on the porch railing. "About you? About all of this?" The animal paused its grooming to give her a look that she had come to interpret as amused tolerance for human doubts. The sound of tires on gravel announced her mother's arrival. Martha Wilson emerged from the rental car looking tentative but curious. At 65, she remained elegant, her silver hair cut in a stylish bob, her posture straight and proud. But there was caution in her eyes as she surveyed the property she had left behind years ago. "It looks just like it did when your father was alive," Martha said as they embraced. "You've worked miracles here." Sarah gave her mother a tour of the renovated house, the updated kitchen, the freshly painted walls, the office where her almost completed novel resided in both digital and printed form. Martha touched things gently, as if reacquainting herself with forgotten friends. "Your father would be proud," she said softly, "not just of what you've done with the place, but of the changes you've made in your life. I was worried when you first told me you were staying, giving up that big position in Boston, but now I see..." Her voice trailed off as the black cat entered the room, walking with dignified purpose before leaping gracefully onto the window seat. Martha froze, her eyes widening in recognition. That's impossible," she whispered. Sarah followed her gaze. "You recognize him?" Martha nodded slowly, approaching the cat with halting steps. "The guardian. Your father's cat. But it can't be. That was years ago and cats don't live." "Sit down, Mum," Sarah said gently, guiding her mother to the sofa. "There's something I need to tell you. Something Dad tried to explain to me before he died, but I wasn't ready to hear." Over tea, Sarah shared the story of the past year, the cat's mysterious appearance in her Boston apartment, the discovery beneath the deckboards, the journal of guardian sightings dating back generations, and her own gradual understanding of what her father had meant about reconnecting with what truly mattered. To her surprise, Martha didn't dismiss the tale as fantasy. Instead, tears gathered in her eyes as she recounted her own experience. "The cat appeared to me too, you know, right after I met your father. I was engaged to someone else then, a sensible match my parents approved of, but I wasn't happy." She smiled faintly at the memory. "Then this black cat started following me everywhere, leading me to places where your father happened to be. My parents thought I was crazy when I broke off my engagement, but you followed your heart instead," Sarah finished, understanding dawning. Martha nodded, her gaze drifting to the cat, which was watching them with those intelligent golden eyes. "After your father died, I couldn't bear to stay here without him. I thought leaving would help me forget." "But you don't forget, love. You just learn to carry it differently." That evening, mother and daughter sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in spectacular hues of red and gold. The black cat sat between them, occasionally touching one or the other with a gentle paw, as if reassuring them of its presence. "What do you think it really is?" Martha asked, stroking the cat's sleek fur. "This guardian that's watched over our family for so long?" Sarah considered the question, remembering all she'd read in the family journals, all she'd experienced herself over the past year. "I think some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, just appreciated. Maybe it's the spirit of the land, like Jack suggested. Maybe it's something else entirely. What matters is that it appears when we need to be reminded of what's real, what's important." Martha smiled, a peace in her expression that Sarah hadn't seen since before her father's death. "Your father used to say that too, that some questions aren't meant for answers, just for contemplation." As darkness fell, they moved inside, lighting a fire in the hearth and continuing their conversation long into the night, sharing memories, healing old wounds, building new connections. The cat remained with them, a silent witness to this reconnection between mother and daughter. Later, as Sarah showed her mother to the guest room, Martha paused in the hallway, gesturing toward a framed photo of Sarah's father that hung on the wall. "You know, The last time I spoke with him before he passed, he told me something strange. He said, when Sarah finds her way back home, tell her that endings are just beginnings in disguise. Martha touched her daughter's cheek gently. I think I understand what he meant now. In the middle of the night, Sarah woke to find the cat sitting on her windowsill, silhouetted against the moonlight. Its golden eyes seemed to glow with an inner light as it watched over her. Thank you, she whispered, for bringing me back, for helping me remember who I am. The cat blinked slowly, that gesture of feline affection, before turning to look out at the moon-washed landscape. Sarah understood then that the Guardian's purpose wasn't just to protect the family from physical danger, but from the more insidious threats, the slow drift away from authentic living, the gradual surrender to values that weren't their own, the quiet desperation that comes from ignoring the heart's truest desires. In the morning, Sarah found her mother in the kitchen, already preparing breakfast, humming a tune that Sarah recognized from her childhood. The scent of coffee and baking muffins filled the air, bringing a sense of homecoming so powerful it made her throat tighten with emotion. Through the window, she could see the black cat sitting on the garden wall, watching a butterfly dance among the last flowers of autumn. The scene was ordinary yet perfect, a moment of simple beauty that she once would have been too busy to notice. Sarah smiled, knowing with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The Guardian had done its work again, guiding another generation of the Wilson family back to the path they were meant to walk. Outside, the Vermont mountains stood solid and unchanging against the morning sky, witnesses to the endless cycle of loss and renewal, of forgetting and remembering, of leaving and returning home. And on the garden wall, the guardian cat, ageless, mysterious, faithful, kept its eternal vigil, golden eyes reflecting the timeless wisdom that some treasures can never be bought or sold, only rediscovered when we are finally ready to see. My friends, we've come to the end of the story. Did you like it? What lesson can you bring to life from this story? Leave it here in the comments. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and watch this video that's playing on your screen. This story will impact you. See you next time.